Thank you for inviting me to speak today at your conference. I'm very excited to be talking to you today about the objective deep skin phenotyping for melanoma risk stratification, incorporating artificial intelligence and 3D total body photography. My name is Bridget Betz-Stablin, and I am a postdoctoral research fellow based out of the University of Queensland Diamantina Institute Dermatology Research Centre, which is led by Professor Peter Sawyer. Today, I'm speaking to you from sunny Brisbane in Queensland, Australia, also known as the melanoma capital of the world. Therefore, it is also right that we also are leading the Australian Centre of Excellence in Melanoma Imaging and Diagnosis. This is a new endeavour supported by the Australian Cancer Research Foundation and consists of a telemedicine network of 15 total body imaging systems. This will allow us to take approximately 14,000 total body images per year, therefore creating the largest, most comprehensive skin imaging database and facilitate the development of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence in dermatology has progressed a lot since the seminal Esteva et al. Paper in 2017. Now, artificial intelligence algorithms can, in most cases, perform as good as or better than most clinicians and dermatologists in terms of a head-to-head comparison classifying lesion images alone. However, the research in the area of artificial intelligence has to date mainly focused on the classification of dermoscopic images alone. We hope to develop algorithms, and we are developing algorithms, and applying them to 3D total body imaging. For those of you not familiar with this technology, the image on the left is our Vectra total body imaging system. A patient steps in and 92 images are taken simultaneously. These images are then stitched into a 3D body avatar, which you can see on the right. This provides a nice overall image of the person and their skin, as well as allowing for zooming in to specific lesions. Additionally, dermoscopic images can be mapped to their exact anatomic location, which provides additional information about the lesion's risk. There are many benefits of 3D total body imaging. The first being that the imaging takes literally seconds and the participant is only required to hold one pose. The clinician can view the skin in 3D, which more closely reflects the in-clinic situation. The image provides accurate spatial representation of the body and the nevi, and can also provide a pseudodermoscopic image. On the right in column B here, we see the zoomed in version of the specific lesion of interest. On the column in the far right, column C, we can see the corresponding dermoscopic image. While the dermoscopic image is clearly of a higher quality, the main features or the changes in the main features of the lesion can be seen in both images and would lead to the same clinical management decision. The total body image also provides us a detailed view of the clinical landscape, allowing a dermatologist or clinician to assess things like the levels of photodamage, as well as the presence or absence of other lesion types. It also allows for the monitoring of the total skin surface as opposed to just the lesions, which allows for detection of de novo melanoma, or we can look back over previous time points and to identify lesions and when they are becoming suspicious. So while this will lead to improved workflow in a clinical setting, the improvement should be even greater in terms of both access and quality in telemedicine in rural communities, particularly those with no dermatologists. And this is of great importance in Australia, where both the incidence and mortality of melanoma in our rural setting is much higher than in our urban setting. So melanoma risk factors are well established. Clinical risk factors include age, sex, history of melanoma, and phenotypic risk factors include skin color, nevus counts, and photodamage. There are also many genetic risk factors which are well established, and there's ongoing research into identifying some of the rarer variants. With respect to the phenotypic risk factors and measuring them, there are many limitations to the current methods. Often they require subjective measures by either a clinician or patient, or, well, like I mentioned, rely on recall, memory, and self-report. These, of course, can lead to the potential misclassification of risk. So our aim is to develop an objective automated DeepSkin imaging phenotype. And to do this, we're going to focus today on 3 phenotypes: the total body nevus count, which is the strongest phenotypic risk factor for melanoma; the anatomic distribution of photodamage, where sun is the strongest, or sun exposure is the strongest environmental risk factor; and skin color. Our hope is that by combining this with clinical risk factors, we will be able to provide a personalized melanoma risk score. So to date, there is insufficient evidence to support population-based screening for melanoma. However, targeted screening of those at high risk may be of benefit. This would allow for personalized screening and surveillance schedules and targeted prevention advice for your specific level of risk. And this can be down to the sub-phenotype level. Overall, the goal is to lead to earlier detection of melanoma. So while I mentioned we've currently had our ASMID study, which started at the beginning of this year, the work that I'm presenting today is mainly based off our Mind Your Moles cohort study. This was a general population cohort study involving 193 adults, and they were recruited from the Australian electoral roll, where in Australia it's actually compulsory to be listed on the electoral roll. Inclusion criteria were skin types 1 to 4, and this was designed to target those at higher risk of melanoma, as well as having at least one nevus. So the first phenotypic risk factor we're going to talk about today is total body nevus counts. When used in studies, there's no consistent methodology. So who measures them differs, and this can be anyone from a dermatologist to a trained research assistant to self-report. We also have large variation in the size measured. So some studies measure nevus counts of those greater than 2 millimeter in diameter, greater than 3 millimeter in diameter, or 5 millimeter in diameter. There is also variation in the type that are counted. So some studies count only atypical nevi, while other studies count all nevi. The method for counting nevi is obviously time consuming, particularly at those at higher risk with many nevi. Often arm counts are used as a proxy. Alternatively, self-report can be used, and this is often classified as having no nevi, few, some, or many nevi. And all of this can, again, lead to misclassification of melanoma risk. So we've actually recently showed that up to 40% of people will or can misclassify themselves if we base the accounts solely on the self-report of category. So while you can see in this graph that the medians have great separation, so we see statistically significant separation between the medians of the groups, the tails are overlapping across all of the plots with exceptions. And this, even if we included a margin of error of plus or minus 5 between the dermatologist counts and the self-reported nevus category, we still found that 40% of people misclassified themselves. So what we wanted to do was create an objective measure for identifying our nevi and therefore having automated nevus counts. So the software that is associated with the Vectra 3-body imaging system automatically identifies lesions, and this is done using a convolutional neural network which takes an image tile and decides firstly whether it has a lesion or whether it's not. So in this specific example that I'm sharing on screen here, this person has 1,277 lesions. Now what we want to do is take the subset of these lesions, which are nevi, and provide a count for this. So to do this, it was quite a lengthy task, and we had to go through each individual lesion and label this as either a nevus or a non-nevus, and this was carried out by a senior dermatologist. So as I mentioned, this was created as part of a 2-step convolutional neural network classification process. The first part, as I mentioned earlier, classifies the image as either a non-lesion or a lesion. And then the second classifier classifies anything that's considered a lesion as either a nevus or a non-nevus. We got reasonable results in terms of the agreement between the human count of nevi and the AI count. However, you'll see this group on the left here that didn't get very good agreement at all. And interestingly enough, when we went to investigate these participants, they all had what we would refer to as lesser Trellat syndrome, which is more than 50 sub-Ks, or we use the definition of more than 50 sub-Ks, large sub-Ks on their back. So basically, the algorithm really struggled with patients that had many sub-Ks and nevi. So this was its probably major limitation. So the second phenotype we're going to talk about today is photodamage. And obviously, as mentioned earlier, this level of sun exposure is the primary environmental risk factor. And obviously, this is a large problem for us in Brisbane. So mostly in the literature, it is measured on one or more body site, it's only measured on one body site, or there's constant levels of sun exposure assumed across the whole population. For example, chronic exposure to the face and the back of arms for everyone in that population, intermediate exposure for the upper front, back, torso, and outer arms and legs, and so on. Otherwise, proxies, self-reported proxies such as the number of hours spent in the sun during leisure time and work hours can be recorded, or the number of painful sunburns in childhood or in adulthood can also be used. What we decided to do was develop a photonumeric scale where we looked at all the body sites of a person. So in our case, we chose 10 body sites to divide the body into 10 body sites, that is, the head, neck, the upper arm, lower arm, torso, upper and lower. The back was divided into thirds, and we also looked at the upper leg and lower leg. Each of these areas was provided a categorical rating of no sun damage, mild, moderate, or absent. To this, we applied statistical clustering with the idea that these people could be formed into patterns of sun damage. And what we found in our Queensland general population was that there was quite a lot of variability, not only in the severity of photodamage per person, but also the severity of photodamage on the various body sites. In fact, our largest group or our largest cluster that we see here, we refer to as the severe moderate general cluster. Basically, all the people in this cluster had either severe or moderate sun damage on all their body sites, with the exception of their lower front or their belly area. And this was, like I mentioned, was the most common pattern seen in Queensland. We also checked for associations with photodamage in terms of characteristics. And as you would expected, being male was associated with the higher or more severe photodamage patterns, as was being older age, being a past or current smoker, or having a personal history of keratinocyte cancer. So now we're developing a convolutional neural network to rate the level of photodamage and provide an objective measure across all body sites. And we're applying this directly to the images from the 3D avatars. And while we're developing this on our Mind Your Moles data, we will be evaluating it on our ACEMID data. And the final phenotype I'm going to talk to you about today is skin type or skin color. And traditionally, this has been measured using the Fitzpatrick skin type, but most of you will be aware that there are many limitations to this, including the fact that it's a categorical measure for a continuous variable. It relies on subjectivity of the clinician or the patient, and it was never actually designed to measure skin color in the first place, even though it's often used to do so. So the gold standard measure of skin color will be to use a spectrophotometer or color meter. However, this is not used in standard practice, and it's quite an expensive piece of equipment to acquire. However, these measures taken by the spectrophotometer can be converted into an individual topography angle. And this gives us the advantage of taking a measure of skin color on the two-dimensional space, and as opposed to just a linear categorical variable. So here is an example where we have manually calculated the individual topography angle directly from our total body images. So here we took the area around the belly, which from our previous research we knew is the least exposed to sun, to calculate our innate skin color. And we were able to extract the same values that you can get from a spectrophotometer directly from the pixels of the digital image. And this was used to calculate a value of ITA of 62.8. And as you can see, this places us in the very light color spectrum in terms of skin color. And we're currently working to expand this phenotype further by adding such variables as freckling density, the distribution of other lesions such as SEB-Ks, which will in turn hopefully improve our nevus counting algorithm, and also body mass index. With our overall goal being, when you step into the Vector 3D total body system, you'll not only output an avatar, but you'll also get an automated DeepSkin phenotype report. And as well as the measures, the individual measures of these characteristics, you'll also get a melanoma risk So, for example, this person is low, and therefore the recommendation is that they should be followed up with a standard protocol of a skin check every 12 months. So, in summary, we aim to combine the clinical phenotype information with our deep imaging phenotype, thus providing an objective, personalised risk score, which will then lead to personalised screening and surveillance programs, as well as personalised prevention advice. Now, as with all research, none of this has been done alone. There's a big team, particularly at the Dermatology Research Centre, that I need to thank. This work was led by Professor Peter Sawyer, and also a lot of support from Professor Monica Jander and Professor Adele Green. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to join you all for the live question session, which unfortunately is at 3 a.m. my time. So if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to email me, and I've included my email at the bottom of this slide. And again, thank you very much for having me.